Hey, welcome back to the Road to Recovery podcast. My name is Ryan, and I'm here as always with my ex-vegan comrade, Tommy. I just got to remind everyone that you're ex-vegan.
You had to slip that in there, Ryan, didn't you? You just ruined the moment.
It means nothing to me, but I like how it affects other people, and I like watching the interaction. But you can let me know, as always. And today we're joined here with a really special guest. We've had on a friend of hers, Bart, before. This is Pim. Thank you so much for being on here. Let me know if I ever say your name wrong or any of that stuff, because I butcher names constantly. I am a Midwestern American, and we are just known for ignorance and a lot of wheat, which is
that's your excuse, and you're sticking to it.
Yes, that is my excuse. And so today we're talking about something that is kind of near and dear to my life experience, and that's carb addiction, and in a sense, along with that, kind of binge eating disorder, which I've gone through the wonderful cycle of that many times. So I kind of give us some background and what you do with the coaching and stuff like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know where to start. I could start from the beginning. I think a lot of people can relate to having been addicted to carbs, but they didn't know it at the time since they were children. And thinking back, I know that I was, for sure. So I have like a few memories. I don't have a lot of memories from a kid, but my mum likes to sleep in. So in the mornings I might have been like 5-6 years old. I used to get the chairs out in the kitchen and climb up and reach into the corner of the top cupboard, because I knew that she would hide the cookies there, because she was hiding them from me. Because she knew that I would be nagging at her until I got one, or I would have a tantrum because I didn't get one. So she just didn't tell me that she had them. And I used to take one or two and hoping that she wouldn't notice. And I don't think she did, because she's never said anything to me. So I don't really know. But it's kind of escalated on from this. That's just like one of the memories that I have that makes me think that this started very early for me.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring up, because the one thing that stuck out for me when you were just talking about that now is many of us are carb addicted but don't know it. Mm-hmm. And it's that dopamine hit we're getting from the carbs that you get good feeling when you're like chowing down on like a cookie or biscuit or something like that. So I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. But I'll let you continue there.
Yeah, I think, I grew up eating a lot of carbs. So I'm from Sweden originally, and my breakfast was pretty much every morning was orange juice with toast and butter and some kind of smoked meat. That's at least it wasn't marmalade, thank God. But when I started school, it took me about 5-10 minutes to walk home at lunchtime, and I hated the school lunches. So I used to go home, cook pasta, eat it with salt and butter, and that was it. And I thought, I can live on bread and pasta for the rest of my life. I don't have a problem with that. I was doing a lot of sports. So when I started learning about nutrition, which was quite early because I've always been interested in it, I was like, oh yeah, this is good. I'm already eating really well, because you need the carb load. And I just kind of justified my eating with that and thought I was doing a good thing. I knew that the sugar wasn't ideal, but carbs are carbs, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think that probably fueled it, but it started to maybe around age 12-ish or so, when I had enough pocket money. I used to go and buy, we have these like they're chocolate bars, 55 grams. I remember everything about them. They're called kexchoklad in Sweden. So it's like a wafer with some chocolate in between. And I just love them. I used to go and buy at least one every day. Like, is that normal? I thought so. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It sounds normal to me.
There you go. So yeah, always interested in nutrition, always interested in sports. So I did start because I'm above average intelligence. So I was kind of bullied by my teachers to go and study natural sciences. But I wanted to do something like baking. I wanted to be a confectioner. So I started studying natural sciences, and I was just like, I don't like it. This is not what I want to do with my life. And then I went on to actually go to the hotel and restaurant school, because I thought that was my alternative. Unfortunately, it was too much cooking, like cooking food. And I loved the dessert department, obviously. And that wasn't very helpful. But when I finished school anyway, I decided I want to be a personal trainer. So that's what I was doing. I took another course, became a personal trainer, a diet advisor. And the sugar thing just kept escalating. So every day, either from and to work or to work, I was always buying some chocolate. So this is just like, it's pure madness, because I was teaching people what to eat. I was teaching them how to train and take care of their bodies. And I was doing everything right, I thought, food-wise. I just had a bit of sugar on top. But it kind of got more and more and more. Because when you are addicted to something, eventually you stop getting the dopamine hit from it. So you stop feeling that pressure, and you just need more of it to actually feel something. And eventually you just need it to feel normal, because without it, you just feel piss poor. If I'm going to use such words.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty much my life. I'm 43 now, and I kept from the age of maybe, I'm trying to think when I tried the keto diet the first time, because that was kind of helpful in some regards, but so it doesn't take away the emotional part. Yeah, no. Go on.
No, and when you're talking about going and buying the chocolate bar every day, it actually reminds me of when I was in high school. Every day on the way up to I was doing an internship at a local college, I would drive through Arby's and get a medium Mountain Dew every day. And then after school, I would drive through Wendy's and get a Frosty every day. And that was
very similar. I used to do a thing where I used to drink about 6 liters of Pepsi Max a day. And I used to eat peanut butter by the jar and chocolate spread by the jar. It was absolutely unreal.
It's
holy crap.
So when for you though, because you're up until this point, you're now like a personal trainer, and it's kind of just become routine, which is I think normal for everyone. Just kind of, and I see it like with my family in their eating patterns and stuff like that. They go through a routine in the evening. They have this every night as sort of their carb hit or whatever they need. It's part of routine. So when did you start noticing it as being an issue?
An issue, I don't know if I don't think I realized that it was an issue as such. It was more like I was never super lean, clearly, because when you're eating chocolate every day, that's not going to happen. So comparing myself to all my colleagues, I thought, you know what, I don't look good. Looking back now, I'm like, well, I was actually quite fit. But, you know, you're always judging yourself in the moment. And when you're around people that are really fit and they don't have much extra on their bodies at all, they're one or two, but I don't compare myself to them. I compare myself to the ones that look really good and they are strong and they're fit and they can do everything. And I thought, you know what, if I just dish the sugar, I would probably look the same and I would probably do better. But I couldn't. I don't know how many times I tried. It's like, on Monday, I'm going to start again. And then you do it for 2 days and then it just gets too much and you give in and you do it again. So the first time I ever actually quit was when I was doing a keto diet, because the cravings just disappeared. And I was like, wow, this is magic. What the hell happened? And at the time, I worked extra on, I think it was like Wednesday evenings and every other Saturday in a bakery. And I was like, yeah, I think I can have one of these and it would be fine. And I just ate one of these little pralines and it was beautiful. And I was fine. So the next time I was like, yeah, I can probably eat it again. And that kind of snowballed pretty quickly, because when you think that you can, you start getting, you're getting a bit of hybrids and you just start pushing the the limits, and all of a sudden there was just needing the carbs again. It's crazy. So I thought I had the solution, but it doesn't work when you kind of keep doing that. And every time you think, next time I'm not going to do that, but you do.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on some of that, Tommy? Because I have a few that are going through my mind.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's really, really difficult because obviously in the fitness world that you're obviously told that you need carbohydrates to build muscle. Obviously dietitians are telling you need obviously carbohydrates in your diet, but especially at this time of year, I think it's really, really difficult for people around Christmas. And what I was going to ask you was if you get any tips that you would advise people to try and put a plan in place to obviously avoid like kind of carb addiction and basically falling off the wagon around Christmas time.
I do, but it's not around food anymore. I mean, I went on to study a master's degree in nutrition because I thought I missed something. That is something that I don't get here that I need to learn. And what they taught me was just what I already knew, like the nutritional guidelines and everything you get in the magazines. And I've never been so disappointed because I thought they must know, what it is that I'm missing. Why am I still like this? And why is it that some of my clients are not losing the weight that they should be doing? Because I was pretty good with that program that you put everything in and making sure they have exactly the right nutrients and the right macros and everything. So this was only like, what is it now? Maybe 3-4 years ago. I hired a coach, and it wasn't even for my cravings. It was just like a life coach, and it turned out that she had been helping people losing weight before and with emotional eating. And I was like, I'm not an emotional eater. I'm not eating when I'm upset, but when I'm eating, it's when I'm procrastinating or when I'm bored, when I'm restless. So clearly I'm an emotional eater. And it took me probably 4 or 5 months before I even thought about trying what she was teaching. And when I did, it worked. It's just crazy. It's like so simple, so easy when you kind of realize that the cravings are just emotions. You don't have to obey the cravings. I'm not saying that it's easy to do, but it's the whole idea and the concept of actually doing it is really easy if you just commit to doing it rather than committing to quitting sugar. Because every time I do the work, cravings, they're not a problem. It's easy to not give in to them. But if I think that, I got this, then I'm going to go and eat it.
No, continue. Go ahead, Tommy.
I was just going to say that's something we talk a lot about on the channel, when there's two opposites to that. Basically, when we talk about emotions, for myself, obviously, I suffered with an eating disorder in the past, and it was basically all because of grief. And for me, I controlled my emotions through restricting my food because I lost my mum, my wife's ovarian cancer, losing my dad. So it's a very similar thing, but it's two broad different subjects, really.
Yeah. No, and even like thinking back to when I started like quote restricting or my food, it's all emotionally based, emotionally based stuff. And so that's why I think, when you have to kind of treat that root in order to actually get the result you want. Otherwise you'll always end up going back to it because you never actually addressed the actual problem. So I think that's pretty fascinating. I think what's amazing for me with the carb addiction stuff is that from looking at it from a person with an eating disorder like myself, it's like, can you meet in the middle? I've always been someone that has to like go 100% on something or just, it doesn't happen. So I've had my hardest time is, how do you work with someone that is like super OCD and anal about whether it's food or everything? And then how do you get them to like, or maybe you don't, how do you get them to like find a good middle ground? You know what I mean? Or is there a middle ground? You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
I actually have a client right now that I think would fit that profile. So we had a rough start, and this happens to some people. They start working with me and they're convincing me that they're going to give in my all, and I'm going to do exactly what you're saying, and we're meeting for a week, and then they disappear.
That's
me.
Like, crickets.
I've got a lot of people that I obviously coach with eating disorders. There's a lot of them like that. They basically, I think you've got to, it's like they're asking for permission to eat certain foods or do certain things. It's like they know the answers to them, but they want you to reaffirm them for them, basically.
Yeah. But I know what they're doing. They're off binging somewhere, and they're too ashamed to come back to me. And the first thing I always tell them is that no matter what happens, I'm not going to judge you. I know exactly what it is like. It doesn't matter if you're binging. The best thing you can do if you are, let me know, send me a message. I usually give my clients even my phone number so they can message me on WhatsApp, so I get it straight away, because I know that it can be very rough in the beginning, and still it's like they're just ghosting me. They always come back and I always try to get them back, and then they come back and they're like, okay, I'm ready now. I just needed to do this. And then it's like, I need to do it all and it needs to be perfect, otherwise I can't do it. But what I'm more about is actually the middle ground. So I'm always saying to my clients, hey, I am not 100% sugar free. Just so you know, that's my goal maybe long term, but I'm not committed to making that decision right now. What I've done the last 3 years is going from being unable to control my eating behavior to be able to control it pretty much, I wouldn't say 100% of the time, but very close to it. I can go months without having sugar, and I don't need to plan for it. I don't need anything, and I'm just feeling okay with it. And I want that to be longer than just months. I would love for that to be years, and that's fine. But I always say that, we need to get control of our prefrontal cortex, which is the planning part of the brain, the rational part of the brain. That needs to be in control 100% of the time when it comes to food in the beginning. So I'm using planning a lot. Like if you today have a really strong craving for a chocolate cake or whatever, I want you to give yourself permission to eat that tomorrow, but not now. I don't want you to give in to the craving right now, because then you just reinforce that pathway in your brain. I want you to delay it 24 hours, because then you can eat it with permission. You're not fueling the bad behavior of giving in to the cravings, but you're actually rewarding the part of the brain that is in control. So I'm not so much about getting off the actual sugar right away. I'm about reprogramming your brain, because long term that will actually give you the solution. And usually it doesn't take that long, because when people have been doing that, they're like, but I don't want to eat the sugar, and they stop planning for it. And then it takes longer and longer between the eating off plan, or whatever you want to call it. So that's pretty much how I deal with it. And I've had a couple of people on my podcast before that are typical addiction experts, and they just think that the only way of doing this is to be 100% abstinent. That would never have worked for me, and I think it wouldn't work for a lot of people. So if you're a person that can do it, go ahead and do it. I think that's probably best for you. It's probably a lot easier than having to manage your cravings for years, but for most people, I don't think it's actually doable.
I would agree. I think, Tommy, you've seen that with, like you said, clients you've worked with eating disorder recovery. And continue.
My wife is actually going through a similar thing at the moment. She's actually been diagnosed as type 2 diabetic, and she's actually suffering with her problems with her eyes. So they're actually thinking she's got early onset of diabetic retinopathy. And she's really, really struggling to stop the kind of eating cakes and things like that. And I'm kind of thinking it's got to the point that it's maybe best just not having them in the house, because she's really, really strict when she's around me. But I'm finding it's during the night when I'm actually sleeping that she's actually going and having these things, and I'm waking up in the morning and they've disappeared and things like that. And it's a real worry, because she's suffering a lot of health issues because of this at the moment.
I think that's, and I've noticed this just with friends I've talked to that are dealing with other complications of certain behaviors, health behaviors. But it's my only saving grace is, like, for instance, when I got sick with my nerve stuff, regardless of why it happened. Well, screw it. I'm just like your wife. I still suck at that. Now that I think about it, I still suck at that, because my behavior is like the opposite problem. It's like I
was going to say that.
Yeah, no, it's complete opposite problem. So I totally relate to that. Actually, it's really hard, and it's a mess. The human mind is a mess. But yeah, I do like your approach, Pim, when it comes to, because I do think you're right. I think for 90 90+% of people, you have to find a middle ground. Like if I were to try to do this I'm trying to help like my family cut back on like some vegetable oil consumption starting next year. And like for them, I know in order to make it a successful transition, it's going to have to be less thinking about removing everything and doing it slowly over time and like slowly reducing what you're consuming or what you're baking and all the stuff for baking with different oils, etc. It's a much slower process where for me, I can't even say that I'm like successful at it because I ask Tommy for permission like every day on something. I had no room to talk in here.
But you recently went carnivore as well, Ryan. So what can I say? Yeah. I will say this though. When I did switch to keto, much like you, Pim, I did notice that I wasn't craving like sugar like I had been in the past, where like I would be like, dang, I really want like some ice cream, and then I would just like refrain from eating it out of pure will and fear with other stuff. But like I actually did not, after I noticed this more as I tried to do more carnivore stuff, I actually wanted just general carbs, even like quote healthy carb like starches, less and less. Like I had a hard time. Like yesterday I had like some rice, and like today I had some like squash, and that was actually kind of hard to eat, not from a mental aspect, but like I just didn't want it. It was like I was forcing myself to eat it for some reason. So I found that kind of interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that type of stuff.
I think that's very interesting. And I've heard other people say that when they're on keto, they still have the cravings, but when they switch to carnivore, they disappear. They just go and they don't need the carbs for some reason or want them. I haven't experienced that myself, but I have never been like 100% carnivore for longer than 16 days. It didn't really agree with me. I got very depressed, like weirdly depressed. So I just had a huge bowl of blueberries and then I felt much better. And then I kept eating my blueberries. But I've heard other people say that. I'm not really sure why that could be. I'm wondering if one of the reasons could be that you're eating a lot of protein, and some people believe that there is an an imbalance in neurotransmitters in the brain which requires certain amino acids. So if you were deficient in one or two amino acids, then eating a lot of meat would probably take care of that. So I think maybe that could be one of the reasons. I don't know. And the other reason is that probably is possible. Yeah. The other reason I'm thinking about is that most people, when they're eating keto, include keto sweets. So you're kind of fueling that sweet taste, and that's gonna get your brain to light up in, various ways to various degrees. But you kind of keep the sweet palate there, and you want the sweet, so you're gonna keep wanting to do that, whether that's real sugar or not. I was doing keto with keto treats, sweet things for years. So I always had the cravings, and every time I would go off the diet, I would just like go for a total binge, even out of character for me, like over the top, because I've been substituting with something that isn't that nice for months. And then I'm just like, I'm going to have everything that I didn't get to have. And I just go on like a month-long sugar binge or whatever. So I'm not for that kind of eating anymore. And I just see so many people asking like, do you have a recipe for this and that is keto? Or what sort of sweeteners can I use? And what can I substitute this with? And I'm like, you just eat real food and stop substituting. Like, take the shortcut. Don't go through that whole long. I get that some people need it for a period of time, but don't do it for years because it's going to mess you up for sure.
I actually have a question based on just that very thing for you, Tommy. With this is because you are ex-vegan. I was kind of curious, and maybe your thoughts on this too, Pim, in general. But when I see like vegans eat I can't believe it's like not a burger, my mind is thinking you're trying to trick your brain into thinking it's a burger because you really want a burger. But just, so my thought is like, it's and like with the keto treat stuff too, it's kind of like, I hate to like judge people. I know we all judge people to an extent. I need to judge people less because I am far from perfect in any shape or form with food, like very far removed from being close to like stellar relationship. But I've always thought like if you're gonna choose a distinct pathway, like if it's harder to do on carnivore because it's hard to make plants out of meat. But when you're going a distinct pathway, I feel like you should either be in or not in. You can't be like part in and then want to. What do you think about that with the fake burger stuff and the fake meat?
I would say to that, the vegan is obviously going to say that it's basically because they love the taste of meat, but they just don't love obviously eating an animal. That's going to be their argument, right? But
yeah,
in my opinion, you really do miss the taste of meat. But I think as well, in my opinion, what I've seen in the vegan community when I was in it, that the ones that actually eat mock meats actually seem to last the longest, which is maybe sounds pretty strange. I don't know why that is, but you do find that the people that are on like the whole food plant-based.
We lost you for a minute there, Tommy. Can you hear us okay? Sometimes his internet cuts out. I think I understand what he was saying as far as like where he was going. Do you have any thoughts on do you work with, so like, yeah, when people ask you for like do you have recipes for like this keto treat or this fat bomb thing? How do you kind of navigate that with a client? Because I still look at that as an unhealthy relationship because it's like they're trying to give themselves permission to eat something, but it's not really that thing. It's like tricking your brain, I guess.
Yeah, so lately I've actually last year or so, I think almost every single client I have had has been trying to do carnivore. So I haven't actually had that problem recently, but thinking back, I've had a couple of people that have been on a normal healthy diet, if you like, and they haven't really been asking too much about substitutes. I usually see this in the Facebook groups, etc.
Yeah, that's where I see it.
Rather than my clients, because I think they know what I'm about. So when we start working together, they're just like, yeah, I'm here for the cravings, not to try and justify substituting anything. I had one or two questions about, but if I have a craving, can I have this instead? And that's usually in the beginning. And I'm just saying, hey, when you do that, you're just treading the same path in your brain. You're still reinforcing that pathway, so it's not going to help you. And I think that the con lands pretty quickly. So when it comes up in the Facebook group, I'm like, sure, you can do this if you like, but this is what happens. And when you do that, and if you do it too often, you're just going to set yourself up for failure long term. So the best thing you can do is use the plan to have, your off meal, and do that with the fat bombs instead of real sugar, if you like. Most people choose to have real sugar instead when they have to do it that way. So I think my message is pretty clear where I stand with regards to that. So people are not pestering me too much about it. Thank God.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally understand. I was actually, because you do work with quite a few people that are trying carnivore, do you look at their carnivore journey as, I mean, everyone's goals are obviously different.
Yeah.
But when you're working with someone that's trying to do carnivore, is that more of a short-term strategy to regain that relationship and then slowly reintroduce stuff? Or are they generally looking long-term, like carnivore style eating? I'm
trying to think that I think most people just want to do it as a lifestyle, like forever. But I do have a couple of clients that are trying to lose weight, so they want to be more strict right now and being a bit more lenient. So my carnivore, if you want to, I call it a meat-based diet because I'm not carnivore, is mainly meat, butter, and sort of fat. And I do have berries, like sometimes several times per week, sometimes maybe once a week. And sometimes I want a banana or whatever, then I'm going to buy a banana. I have had avocados a couple of times the last month. I mean, I'm not 100% anymore. I'm not just going to eat real food. So if I'm having it, I don't even like calling it a cheat. I'm just eating real food, but it's mainly meat-based. And a lot of people find this kind of relieving that I'm doing that, and they're like, well, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be 100% carnivore. Fine, you do whatever you want because it's your life, and if you don't have any bad side effects from the plants, which I don't, then why not? If you enjoy them. I am sure that maybe they are not great, but I'm one of these people, my body can take a lot of abuse before it tells me that something's wrong. I'm not one of the canaries in the coal mine. So I'm having to look at the people that are very sensitive to things to figure out what's probably good and bad for other people. Because I know that maybe for me, this is going to turn up in 30 years' time. It's just a delay. So I'm not going to sit and make kale smoothies or whatever. But if I want to eat kale, then I'm going to eat kale. Not that I would want kale, but you get my point. I'm not that bothered.
No, I mean that
doesn't create cravings.
That's kind of how I've looked at it after I even just reduced carbs really low. I kind of look at it as like if I ever go full carnivore, it'd be more of a set, like a reset period of time in my body, like just a reset. Because I'd be similar to you where I would like eat berries and occasional fruit and stuff like that, which I think is pretty, if you're trying to do it like ancestral diet based, eat like your ancestors, it's probably pretty ancestrally accurate. I saw you smirk earlier, Tommy. What was that about? I think it was about cheat days.
I don't know, Ryan.
I've never cheated.
No, I mean, I did that whole cheat day thing too. I think what really messed me up was I was working back in the day when I was trying to regain some weight when I was really low weight. I was working with a personal trainer, probably someone similar to what you were doing with clients back in the day, helping them with their fitness goals and diet and stuff. But he didn't understand the psychology of eating disorders. Mm-hmm. So to him, when he would explain things to me, he actually encouraged me to binge. He was like, every weekend, I want you to eat like 5,000 calories both those days, like Friday through Sunday, which I don't even think necessarily was a bad idea. I think his like heart was in the right place with it. I just think I took that and then I took it to the next level with binging, and I manifested it into an unhealthy behavior in the future, where what I would do was on the weekend, I would basically go to every fast food restaurant I loved and just like eat 10,000 calories of just sugar basically. And then I would freak out. And then the rest of the week, Sunday through the next Saturday, I would just eat like next to nothing egg whites, like some spinach in that to like compensate. Yeah. And so it was just like this terrible spiral behavior.
It's basically how our mind perceives things, and we just become obsessive about it. Like that was really all that was there. You've just taken that, what he said, and just became obsessed about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you ever tell him what you were doing, how you were eating, and how you were eating the rest of the week? Was he aware of?
I was one of your I was like one of your clients that was like, literally, I sat down with him. First day, I was like, dude, 100% committed. I did it. I will do anything you say. And I hate this because I still do it to like an extent where like I'll say like, I am all in. And then my mind goes, And I'm just like, I'm going to do what he said, but I'm going to do what I also think is right. So I don't actually listen to what you say. And then I just take whatever you say as like a permission to do what I actually want. It's really frustrating for everybody.
Ryan's great at telling me things, but he won't tell any other people. But he asks me for the answers and I tell him, and then the next week he's asking me the same thing again.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's a wonderful relationship me and Tommy have. Cheers to you.
No, I don't think I've ever had a client like in the gym that's told me that, oh yeah, I was binging the whole weekend or anything. They wouldn't tell me any such things.
The thing was, when I was working with him, I actually was honest, but at that point it was like I needed to gain weight no matter what, almost. Yeah. So being honest with him.
Still at that point, no, really.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, but we're going to mention numbers, but you're at quite a low weight compared to even me.
You know what my justification now, though, is in my brain that I need to get past is that I've never been, quote, standard weight. I've always been underweight, because when I look at my license from when I was like 17, prior to developing my eating disordered problems, I just ate shit like every other like teenage kid who thought that that's just how you eat. When you're a teenager, you eat pizza whenever, you eat like chips and stuff just all the time, or whenever you want. I was like 117 pounds when I was doing that. And so
you're 125 or something, aren't you?
Yeah. So it's like, but that's like my justification is like, well, if I was
and I'm 170 and I'm the same size height as you.
Yeah. So, I know. This podcast quickly turned on me fast.
That's it, Ryan. I'm giving you straight.
I just find, no, I appreciate it. I just find the carb addiction thing interesting, because I have to personally be careful about talking about anyone else having carb addiction problems as saying it's wrong, because I myself have a bad relationship with carbs and other things. I just found it fascinating when I went carnivore, and you said like many of your clients notice this, where they stop craving sweets or like tons of fruit or other grains and stuff like that. And in my mind, it's like, is that dangerous? Because is that a wrong step? I'd actually like your thoughts on that, Tommy. Now that, because I'm sure other people go through something like that, where they get to a point and then they start looking at what's generically out there as information. What is the correct information as far as like when it comes to carbs? Because you hear different things in all these crazy communities about all the different micros and what's actually needed and stuff like that. So it gets like cannon fodder, and you don't know how to, compute any of it.
It's difficult, obviously, when you're dealing with eating disorders, because in that scenario, basically, you've got to be able to not restrict any food group. So when we're talking about that, obviously, carbs are essential for recovery, especially for a certain period of time. So the way I always advocate is don't avoid any food group. Like, people I'm actually working with at the moment, I've actually got one that's actually he was basically following a carnivore diet, and that was basically because he had a fear of carbohydrates. So trying to get him to obviously phase carbohydrates in the form of things like, what we've actually had to do is like introduce things like shakes, where he would be adding in things like goat's milk, some oats that he was afraid of, some berries into that. Now he's kind of developed onto things like sweet potatoes and things like that. So that's kind of my position on that, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I just find it interesting when Pim, when you're working with clients who I guess, how do you get them comfortable with like admitting like, hey, this last weekend I binged all weekend. You know what I mean? Because the obvious go-to is to like not tell you. You know what I mean?
It's a tricky one.
That comes through trust, I would say, really. Trust between you and them.
Yeah. Some people do trust me pretty much straight away. For other people, it seems to be like a process that they just have to go and do it on their own. And I mean, as I said, I know what they're doing. It's obvious. It's always the same thing when they do it. And then they come back and they got the tail between their legs. And sometimes it happens 2 or 3 times, and that's fine. And what I do is that I'm just pretty much every time I talk to them, I just tell them that so far I have never seen anyone go from I want to quit sugar or whatever carbs it might be, or some people coffee or whatever, to quitting. It is an up and down journey. You're going to fall off. Expect that to happen because it's part of the journey. If you're not, then you're the first person I'm ever going to see probably, and the only one I'm probably ever going to see that didn't fall off the wagon somewhere along the way. Because so far, even some of my clients that have been like brilliant, they've fallen off I usually work with people for 12 weeks, and they've fallen off at some point. Maybe a minor fall off, like the hand snuck into the cookie jar and it was just one cookie, but they've still done it. And that's the whole thing, that for some people it's a crash, for other people it's a minor dip, but it's going to happen. And I just trying to reinforce it, that expect it to happen. And when it happens, look at it like, okay, it happened. Now I can learn from this. I can move on. Now on my journey, I'm destined to have it happening X amount of times. Now it's one less. So keep moving forward. It's probably going to happen again. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're practicing your new behavior as often as you can and keep moving towards that goal. And usually they kind of, they do tell me, but it kind of disappears fairly quickly. There might be a minor sidestep here and there, and then they're like, this happened. And they kind of turn around sometimes to try and make it like a non-issue. And I want them to address it with me, because as much as I'm not, it's going to happen, we need to use it and learn from it. So we can't just sweep it under the carpet, because then we're kind of ignoring that it happened, and we can pretend that it didn't happen, and that's not going to be helpful either. So everything that happens needs to come up, and we need to have a look at it, go through it, see, okay, what triggered you? Why did you react that way? How come that you couldn't sit with the craving and just allow the craving to be there, and look at the situation, and then kind of almost like make a plan for what to do next time that happens. And that's how you kind of can move on, and hopefully that same situation will not end in the same mishap, if you like.
No, that's good advice. I think that's advice that translates kind of across the board with anybody who's trying to achieve some sort of any goal, really, whether it's like a mental goal, a professional goal. I think like what you said, you kind of have to give yourself a little grace along the pathway. Know that perfection, and this has been my journey as well as I'm sure yours, Tommy, too, is that you are not going to go in this straight line of you're going to get there perfectly. It's usually a really bumpy, bumpy graph. If I were to have actually Excel spreadsheeted my recovery, which actually, I think it's funny, my dad actually did for a while track my weight by pen for like a good year. And I think if we actually plugged it into an Excel, it'd be like this. And I look at my fitness pal and it's like this. but it's just one of those things. So I think that's you have any other thoughts on that, Tommy, or anything?
No, I think you've covered that. Yeah.
No,
definitely.
There's another thing that I also want people to know is that it's pure biology. Like we are programmed to eat those kind of things. We're not made for being in a society where we have all these temptations and processed foods that stimulate that sort of reward every time we eat it. So anyone who's addicted to anything is actually a perfect human being. We would have done really, really well back in the days seeking out our own food and finding whatever we wanted to do or eat, etc. So we're kind of fighting our own biology because we have to, because we're so clever at making all these foods that just taste amazing and lights everything up really easily. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with you. Like really, there is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a well-functioning human being, and I need to work with that. I need to learn how to control that, unfortunately. And 10,000 years ago, no one needed to control that because that wasn't an issue.
No, I think that's such a really good note kind of to end on, actually, because I think that's something that everybody relates to. So I really appreciate you, Pim, coming on and talking about some of this stuff, because it's been a truly kind of eye-opening discussion for me on multiple fronts. And I think carb addiction is really just the story of human addiction in general, and human psychology and behavior, and how our hormones were meant to work over millions of years of evolution and behavior. We're really all just acting as a human being, and it's really the environment that's changed around us that's making these behaviors either amplified or suppressed. And it's finding that medium in between that you're helping people achieve. So please let us know where people that are dealing with stuff can reach out to you if they want to talk about this type of stuff, or etc.
So I have a Facebook group if people wants to join that, which is called Life Without Cravings. I can send you the link if you like.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Or if they want to speak to me directly, they can always email me at pim@pimjansson.com. You can put that email out there as well if you like.
That would be fantastic. Send me both of those, and we'll put them in the description when we get this up. Well, but anyway,
thank you so much for having me on.
No, it was great.
A pleasure.
As always, Tommy, it's good to see you. So
good to see you.
And we will see all of you in the next one.
Well, thank you.